Well, let's begin our news review now. This morning, I'm joined by political reporter for Politics Home, Tom Scottson, and campaigner and author and broadcaster, Natasha Devon. Great to have you both here this Bank Holiday Monday. Let's kick off, shall we, Natasha? The front page of the Daily Telegraph. Angela Rayner, she's been talking about that social media ban. There's been a consultation for the government, and that ends essentially tomorrow. What has Angela Rayner been saying?
Well, Angela Rayner has appeared on a podcast and she's urged Keir Starmer to just do it. She's pointed out that it's an incredibly popular policy. Lots of people, I think the last polling I saw was about 75% of the population want to see this ban. And I understand why people's hearts are saying yes to this. But our heads should be a little bit more cautious, I think. And that probably explains why both Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham have said, were they to be leaders, that they would maybe introduce a note of caution on this, because all of the first studies, I think there's been 5 studies so far that have come out of Australia where a ban has been introduced, suggest that 12 to 16-year-olds, about 60% are continuing to use social media. And the danger is, if you've imposed a ban, you don't then regulate the social media sites in the way that is needed. So I'm completely with Ian Russell, Molly Russell's father, who's been part of this government consultation, when he says we need to look at the evidence here and lead with our heads, not our hearts.
Yeah, do you think, Tom, that this needs to be a more nuanced debate? The fact that actually there's no onus on the social media companies to change. It's an outright ban, but actually those big tech companies don't do anything differently.
I think Natasha was completely correct there, that we've seen in Australia people have got around the ban particularly, and therefore as soon as something's banned, that it's not properly regulated. And I feel that what's kind of coming out here, particularly the politics, is Rayner's looking and thinking she would like a job probably in a potential cabinet, whether it's going to be Streeting or Burnham. It's likely to be Burnham. She's seen this as a popular policy, not just in the country, but particularly in the parliamentary party. And I think she's angling very cleverly here and saying, I'm with the members, I'm with the PLP, and therefore she's suiting herself pretty correctly for a potential job in a new government.
It's really interesting, isn't it? You stated there, Natasha, that 60% of Australian children under the age of 16, they're not complying with the ban. Things like wearing makeup, that can, go under the radar in terms of age verification. It can be fooled. In other cases, kids putting moustaches on their faces to get around those restrictions that you think are meant to be there to protect them. I think, as a parent of 2 young kids that are not social media yet, but they've been born into a social media age, so banning them outright, I don't think is the answer from a parental point of view, because it's about that education around how to use social media, how to be safe online, teaching our teachers even how to understand, the best ways to engage with social media. So I think actually, I'm actually with you on this. I think if we look really closely at banning social media, it's on one level actually doing injustice to a younger generation.
And it's worth noting that the current age is 13. They're not supposed to be on social media under the age of 13. We could do more to enforce that, I think. But a lot of parents feel like you, that they would rather hold their children's hands through their first 3 years, their forays into the social media space.
Yeah, and it's algorithms that are so important here, and that doom scrolling, because there are technologies where they could ban doom scrolling, where they could address algorithms. So I think a more nuanced approach actually is really needed, rather than an all-out ban. Where do you stand on this, Tom?
Yeah, I agree. I also think as well, it's not, when we talk about doom scrolling, it's not just under 16s that are affected by this. That I think, people like me, any kind of age group, you kind of go up in the morning and most people just go onto the phone and doom scroll straight away and half an hour's gone. And I think most people can sympathise and empathise with that. So I think it's not just a younger generation thing. I think it's affecting all different age groups.
Yeah, absolutely. The conversation continues on that one. Tom, take me to the front page of The Guardian, a pressure on Farage to prove hack claims. So he's claiming that Russian hackers hacked information that revealed this 5 million gift from a crypto billionaire.
Yeah, it's become quite a complicated story now. So Farage, more than a month ago, I think it was revealed that he'd received a 5 million donation. He said originally that it had been a gift, which it was, for £5 million, and he said it was for his security. Then the story changed slightly that it was actually not necessarily just for security, but also a reward for him campaigning for Brexit. So that definitely changed it. And now what seems to have come to light from an interview yesterday is that he's received this money, but also not only just received this money, but it's been uncovered, I should say, because it's been a Russian hack. So he's now under pressure now to prove this, which is obviously going to be difficult because Farage and his team will say that actually we're not going to do this because this is a privacy and security, and Farage has been quite strong in saying that this should never have been revealed. But it also does show that the kind of type of political donations that are happening within the country, but also is this a precedent for what could happen with future reform UK politicians? So it's quite difficult territory here, and I feel that this is probably the strongest pressure Farage has been on since he's been in Parliament, anyway, for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so just for context, before you enter Parliament, you're meant to declare any kind of donation 12 months before you entered Parliament, essentially. So that's the important part here too. But Natasha, Nigel Farage's team, are saying that his phone, his email, his bank accounts were compromised by hostile agents.
And if they were, that's a completely different story. I think he's trying to deliberately complicate this story because he's trying to detract from being potentially given £5 million. Let's not forget that just before he was given this money, Farage says, I'm leaving politics because there's no money in it. Then he's given a £5 million donation and suddenly decides to run as the MP for Clacton and become the leader of Reform again. This needs to be thoroughly investigated, and we need to stop being distracted by all of these claims that Farage is making.
OK, we're going to move on now. There's another story, isn't it? I haven't got this, actually. It's inside the Daily Mirror. Can you tell us a bit more about this story?
It's about the heat wave. So we are on 34 degrees today. Oh, no, it's not, sorry. We're talking about don't get distracted by the leadership contest. So this is a major advisor to Keir Starmer who has said, and I think that there's a lot of sense in this. This is Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. He has said, we're in danger of thinking that Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner or whoever it might be that might launch a leadership challenge with Keir Starmer would be this kind of panacea that would solve all of the problems in the party, and suddenly Labour would be popular again and politics would be drawn back to the centre and the status quo would be restored. And he's saying that's probably not going to be the case. And I think that these are very wise words, actually.
It's so interesting. Our Home Editor, Jason Farrell's done this report about whether the UK is ungovernable, and it's travelled from London up through Wales to the northwest. It's on YouTube, actually. Do check it out. But part of that investigation was talking to people about, you know, what they want from the government, essentially, and a lot of people reflecting on the fact that change hasn't come quick enough. So we're in this generation, aren't we, of social media, and you're flicking, as we were saying in that top story there, doom scrolling, algorithms. And the issue is, to Natasha's point, Tom, I suppose, is there one person that can solve everything and solve it quickly?
And I think we are probably expecting too much from government. I think that MPs would always tell you that what the country want is they want more public spending but fewer taxes.
Yeah.
Always the age-old problem. And I think this is going to be the same new Prime Minister that comes in, that I think there'll probably be a small bounce in the polls that there usually is, but they're going to face the same old problems where welfare spending is going up, there's more demand for the NHS, obviously people are getting older, so pensions are going to require more money, but at the same time people are feeling poorer, whether it's just the war in Iran, war in Ukraine, cost of living crisis, you've got the energy crisis, so they're going to face the same problems, and unless they deal with those fundamentals, which I don't think the parliamentary party are going to allow them in this parliament, then they're probably going to end up like Keir Starmer and his fate, where he's become the most unpopular Prime Minister on record, and I think that trend is just going to continue.
This is a really interesting story. It's on the front page of The Times. We've been covering it too on Sky News. An RAF jet carrying the Defence Secretary John Healey is travelling home, wasn't he, from visiting British soldiers stationed in Estonia. But the GPS system on his plane essentially was null and void. Terrifying.
Yeah, very, very concerning. And it's also lucky that, of course, the RAF had systems that they could use privately anyway, and and get the Defence Secretary back home. And I think this is also something that's been happened before anyway, believed to have happened 2 years ago when Grant Shapps was Defence Secretary. And I feel that this is this kind of constant warfare that Russia are now jamming, whether it's our RAF systems, whether it's underwater cables, whether it's this kind of invert sort of warfare that's not obviously, you know, over just yet. But I think this is kind of concerning pattern that's showing that it's becoming more aggressive, and it just feels that we are in a really kind of very concerning space now, and it feels that it's becoming a lot hotter anyway, this sort of Cold War that's been going on for the last few years with Russia.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. So on to the Daily Express then. Natasha, the heat wave, we're expecting it to be the hottest ever May. On record, it's sweltering, apart from, you know, coastal parts of northern Scotland, where it seems that that's the place to be if you're not into the heat. But a real kind of display of how people are trying to cope across the country.
It's interesting, the Daily Express, one of the few newspapers who hasn't chosen to illustrate this story with people doing yoga with llamas. I'm not sure how that got so much traction, but also one of the few papers to mention greenhouse gases as well, because we have had these kind of anomalous Mays before. We had one in 1922, one in 1944. But the major difference here is because of greenhouse gases, it's intensifying the heat. And Britain just isn't, we don't have the infrastructure for this kind of heat. We're not built for it.
No.
On Saturday, when I was making my way home from my radio show, it took me twice as long as it normally would because the tubes just broke. And I think we're really going to have to wrangle with this because every summer we're hearing words like hottest on record, record-breaking temperatures. We're going to need to really look at what we can do to make the country fit for purpose in temperatures like this.
And it's interesting because it's all extreme weather. It's not just the heat. It's when we have extreme rain, so infrastructure's flooded, or snow, and everything grounds to a halt. Meanwhile, yeah, yoga and llamas. Interesting take, isn't it? Tom, what can you tell me in The Guardian, zoo animals in the heat, to wrap us up?
Yeah, it was quite funny how they were looking to kind of cool themselves down eating blood lollies, which is something that kind of really stood out to me particularly. But it's kind of interesting and quite intriguing that they're definitely more adapted to the heat, particularly than those that are going to Chester Zoo at the moment.
Oh, I love Chester Zoo.
It is a great zoo. It's not too far from my actually family home up north near Chester and Greater Manchester. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. It's also kind of pointing out the fact that they are a lot more adapted to the heat anyway than particularly people like us that are tourists going. So yeah, very interesting and quite a sweet story.
Yep, simpler life. Maybe it's easier. Natasha, Tom, thanks so much for your company. Thanks for your company at home. Do stay with us. More at the top of the hour.
We're trying to see as much as we can.